for the Slacks Creek property, the other thing that I took out that happened in the last couple of years is that there's a meth issue. Happened actually not last year, the year before, when one of my tenants essentially was no longer living there and his mate was actually moving in there. There's suspicions that because of the high electricity bill, and also the property manager actually spotted the meth being left on the table. So there were suspicions that the illegal tenant who's being tenanted in there essentially was cooking meth. So that sparkled the whole drama of actually getting meth tested, and it was a whole new experience for me, essentially. From the end result, it gives me the idea of how important it is to have landlord insurance, especially a good landlord insurance in place, because from the day that we had to get the crappy tenant out, who was the meth tenant, from the date that we had to kick him out, which was basically December 2017, till the time when all the saga, all the testing, all the cleaning, all the recovery, etc. being done, that's a good 6 months period. So basically from December 2017 to close to June 2018, I have no tenant in my Slacks Creek property. So if I didn't have a good landlord insurance policy in place, then I'm not going to be paid all the time, and I'm just going to get myself in trouble. Thankfully, in this case, the insurance company obviously acknowledges that yes, this is a meth issue, and it was completely caused by the tenant, and therefore I was literally reimbursed for the whole period. Think about the 6 months of rent, and at that time the rent was also a lot higher. So that was the tenant at that time was actually paying at $470. So I was actually getting a much higher rent at that time, and that was the insurance company was paying me out literally 6 months of the rental payment, plus on top of all the cleaning, plus on top of all the investigations, because it was all covered under like the meth contamination case. So that's why I think the lesson I took out of that is you can't control the type of tenant that you choose. So this tenant, which we selected, was who was paying $470, had a stable job at Harvey Norman, had good records before, but for some reason he moved out and his mate moved in. Not sure why. So from the initial application side of things, certainly it was going to be okay, but who knows, 6 months down the track, that's what happened. And then the property became a bit of a meth house, which is unintended. So that's number one. You can't control what the tenant do, and you can only do your best in terms of tenant selections, but make sure you always have a good landlord insurance in place, and make sure that in South East Queensland, it's actually quite common, especially in these lower social demographic areas. You want to make sure that you have a landlord insurance that also covers these type of meth contamination cases. So if you're looking for a insurance policy, make sure you ask the insurer to say, what is your policy in relation to meth contamination or any kind of drug usage by the tenant? So that way you're covering yourself. So that was a big lesson for me, because in the end, 6 months of payment plus everything, I think I got reimbursed close to about $40,000 all up. So imagine that if I don't have this in place, or if I haven't used the right insurer who's got coverage on this, then how much rental loss I'm going to have. So that's another lesson there from the Slacks Creek property. And then another story about the Slacks Creek property is, one of my lessons talking about don't use an uncertified tradie. So if you've been following me or you've been reading my blogs, you would be aware that this is the property that I had an uncertified tradie coming in and do a bit of work. He basically painted the walls, he put in the carpets, and he also installed a kitchenette downstairs, because this property is a high set, and downstairs there was a lounge with a bathroom by itself. So it's like a self-contained granny flat type of style. So I had initially get him to actually install the kitchenette downstairs, and then also tidy up the bathroom a little bit. But over time, I look back and in the latest tenant that I had to move out, I actually had to reverse a lot of those things. So first of all, the carpet wasn't done correctly; it was actually nailed. So the carpet was actually nailed into the floorboard. Can you believe it? So that was causing a lot of headaches at the time when I was doing it. Definitely not professional. The second part about the painting of the walls, or the paints, it's terrible. The quality of that is just terrible. I've had a look at it before we decided that we're actually going to get it over and done with again. And he decided to do these feature wall type of stuff as well. So, you know, blue paints, or, you know, some sort of other random colorful paints on the wall. And he said that was the latest trend. But believe me, all I wanted is just a vanilla type of color on there. You know, looks spacious, functional, that's all I'm after. And the kitchenette that we installed downstairs, I had to take it out because it wasn't legally compliant as well from the electrical side of things, because it was plugged straight into a wall socket. So in the latest rounds before we put in another tenant, and that was after the meth contamination has happened, I had to spend money to actually get that kitchenette removed completely. So looking back, you know, that was a bit of a waste of money, unfortunately, but it was well lesson learned. So, you know, looking back at, again, you know, that's why I have to reiterate, if you are actually going to do some work on the property, make sure that you engage a certified tradie. This guy was a cash job from day one, and that was me trying to cut corners, try to actually spend as little as I possibly can, and that's unfortunately not getting me anywhere. So yeah, I guess that was another lesson that I got out of it. So there was a massive learning curve for the Slacks Creek property over the last couple of years, I have to say. You know, we had the swimming pool, which is continuously giving me gripe every time with this chlorinator or pump issues and quotes comes through. I was like, oh, here's another blow to the heart, and especially to my wallet as well. So that was the pool. That was the meth contamination issue, which, again, you know, there was a lot of time being spent liaising with my property manager at that time, and also following up with the insurance company. And trust me, it was not a pleasant experience anyone wants to go through. But luckily enough, as I said, you know, the insurer does acknowledge that it was a contamination issue. So from the end result, it was fine, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. And obviously the tradie issue, if you are going to do some work, make sure that you engage not a cash tradie, but a proper certified tradie who's qualified on QBCC as well on that basis. So those are my couple of tips. And you know, it's been I'd say about close to 3 years now holding this property. Apart from these major issues, everything else seems to be humming along fine. So the yield is still kicking in fine at the moment. And hopefully in the next couple of years we'll see some capital growth, and at that time I'll be able to pull some equity and be able to use that again to purchase the next property. But again, if I was to choose, and if you ask me would I purchase this property again, look, one of the fundamental issues is I focused too much on the yield, and that's why at that time I pretty much ignored the demographic side of things. Even though I've tried to find a balance between choosing Slacks Creek or should I be choosing Springwood, which is a lot better demographic perspective, but you obviously need to pay higher in terms of price. But at the same time, if I look back, I probably would go with a more balanced approach. So, you know, not looking at about 6.85% type or 7% type of yield. I'll be looking at more towards a 6% yield, but in a better demographic suburb and with a more capital growth opportunity. So that's one of the lessons that I learned nowadays if I were to look back, because you know, it's not about cash flow. This one proved to be a cash flow property, and if you can imagine, at close to 7% gross rental return, it's pretty much break neutral after tax. But with all these maintenance issues that I'm having, every time if there's rental arrears or if the tenant moves out, then essentially I have to fork out money myself again. So if I do the actual numbers, I would say this property still costs me money across the long term. Not much, but it's still costing me money. Okay. So there's my couple of tips about my Slacks Creek property. I hope you guys like the 2019 review. If you got any questions, feel free to comment below. Otherwise, like the video, subscribe, and don't forget to share it with your friends who is looking at investing.